2022 has dealt us a fair share of crap cannolis, with everything from gas prices and inflation to the inflated gas bag that is Elon Musk. But no one could have prepared us for what our eyes had to watch as we prepared for this episode. So sit back, grab your Pepto Bismol and some extra strength ibuprofen, because we're about to go through a bevy of badness in this edition of Grading on a Curve. Welcome everyone to the year-end edition of Grading on a Curve, and It's Not That Bad production. I'm Jay, and I have a slew of movies and a slew of guests to go through all the crap that 2022 served us. We are looking at 5 of the worst movies released in this calendar year. So as I introduce each of our guests, I'm going to apologize to each of them profusely. First things first, joining the show for the first time ever. If you listened to the Hudson Hawk episode, you heard my best friend Morgan. Now there is another. His son Martin has joined the show for the first time. Martin, welcome to Grading on a Curve. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. Happy to be here.
All right. So let me throw this at you here. When the offer was made for you to join the show, and then you had to find out what movies we were watching, how much did you start to question your life choices?
Just a little bit. You know, getting through the first few wasn't too difficult, but as we're getting down the list, it was kind of like, oh, I'm still doing this, huh?
I'm still here. This is one of those things where when Netflix says, are you still watching? It's not exactly just a programming issue. It's an intervention at that point.
I got the message. Why are you still watching?
Why is Gamora? You heard her voice, and she's here in person. My lovely wife, Carrie, is here. Carrie, how quickly did you want to divorce me for watching these 5 films?
If I answer, it's on record. I do want my 10 hours back of my life, though.
Did it equal 10 hours? I mean, it felt like it, but did it?
Oh, it felt a lot longer than that. 10 years, maybe.
And joining us as well, the man who has been on this show so many times, we have started to leave places for him at the dinner table, and I'm pretty sure he has a stocking over at the fireplace. Greg from Movie Date Night is back. Greg, welcome back. How you doing, man?
Been a real naughty boy after all the things I said about these movies.
Okay, as long as it's not like Violent Night naughty, because that was a great 2022 movie.
Heck yeah, it was.
I wish we were talking about that one. That would
so
be good.
One thing I did, and I'll pass this on to anyone else who's listening as a fun little game you can play at your holiday parties. Get a collection of photos of all the actors who have played Santa Claus from different movies, including David Harbour from Violent Night, and then ask them the question, present or pass, meaning like the smash or pass, except the question is, would you sit on this man's lap for a present?
Oh. Or pass.
So, for example, some of the options I have, of course, is David Harbour from Violent Night. I have Dan Aykroyd from Trading Places. He's in a Santa suit.
Ooh, pass.
I, of course, have Ed Asner from Elf.
Present.
Kurt Russell from The Christmas Chronicles.
Oh, present.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like couldn't say it hard enough. Billy Bob Thornton from Bad Santa.
Oh, hard
present.
Pass. Hard pass.
Ooh, Carrie is more of my friend now.
Oh, because you just know that if you got a little too close, you'd be smelling the eggnog, and there's something in the eggnog there.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a fun little game. There's tons of other ones out there, but yeah. Have fun with present or pass, everybody.
There's an episode of a podcast just waiting to happen on that one. I can just imagine.
That is amazing. That needs to happen.
That's how my brain works, you know?
And that's why we love you, dude. That's why we love you. Okay, so let's prepare everyone for this, okay? 5 of the worst movies released in 2022.
Jason, I'm sorry. I don't want to derail you. You did that incorrectly based upon the time of year we're on. 5 movies.
Yes.
I should have done broken down. See how many Oscar nominees are in there, how many Emmy nominees are in there, and yeah. Well, we're going to have a Pentagon of Pain and a pear tree on this one. So before we get into the movies, let's find out what we're talking about in this Pentagon of Pain. Prepare for the multiplex of madness in this melee of mediocrity that is the worst 2022 had to offer. In the first corner, a movie about it taking 9 rounds to kill someone, which we all know is a lie because we still have to deal with 50 Cent. It's 9 Bullets. Up next, if you're still trying to find out what special sauce makes it possible for Pete Davidson to date every hot celebrity under the sun, let me tell you, this ain't the answer. It's the animated agony that is Marmaduke. Our third movie sees Kevin Hart in a relationship with someone way out of his league, only to find himself messing everything up and in a situation way over his head in The Man from Toronto. In our fourth movie, we watch a movie starring Kevin Hart in a relationship with someone way out of his league, only to find himself messing everything up and in a situation way over his head in Me Time. And finally, in a year that will see a biographical picture about Whitney Houston, find out what the Kirkland brand version of that would look like in beauty. Hark, the horrid movies are here. Let the ranking of the rank begin.
Ding, ding. You need a bell.
I do need a bell. I need a bell sound button on here. So yes, those are the 5 movies that we are looking at. 9 Bullets, Marmaduke, Beauty, The Man from Toronto, and Me Time. And if you think I repeated myself in that, I did, but so did Kevin Hart. But we're going to tackle this chronologically as far as release date or release month goes. So that means we're starting with 9 Bullets. Let's give you a brief rundown on here. This film stars Lena Headey, Sam Worthington, and Dean Vasquez, with smaller roles by Colin Camp, who played Kirkland from the Police Academy movies, and Barbara Hershey. It was written and directed by Gigi Gaston, limited release in April, and according to IMDb, has a worldwide gross of under $200,000. Why is this movie here? Because of the critic score. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, it has an audience score of 45%, but the tomatometer is a big old round 0. So we're going to go with our new guest first. So Martin, what was your take on 9 Bullets?
It was a very confusing watch. It felt like there was a lot of stuff that they were trying to set up in terms of making you feel for the characters, and then it never really paid off, and I wasn't really sure what to feel watching it.
Did it feel a little bit like there were parts of the script kind of missing?
Yeah. Jumping around a bit, and you're kind of like, where's this going next? And then it felt like it was paying off stuff that didn't get set up.
So, I mean, as you're watching this, like, it's one of those things where you're like, A, why are you watching this if you didn't have to? But B, you got some really decent actors in here with Lena Headey, of course, from Game of Thrones, and Sam Worthington, who at one point in time was supposed to be the biggest thing, to come to theaters. And now he's doing this kind of role. Like you're like, as you're watching this, it's like, how did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. It seemed like it had a really good sort of cast and setup, and it just didn't pay off. Okay,
so of the 5 films, as you're ranking these, with 1 being the best of the 5 being the worst, where does 9 Bullets sit for you?
Probably sits about 4, honestly.
Okay, so not too bad. We've got 9 Bullets sitting at 4. Greg, going to toss this one over to you. Game of Thrones cast, Clash of the Titans cast, and not a very good movie. How was 9 Bullets for you?
Oh, thanks for asking. Jason hated it. Bored to tears the entire time. Every single scene felt like it didn't matter what order it came in. It almost is like you could have taken the scenes, thrown on individual pages, thrown them up into the air, let them fall as they may, and then that's the order of our script, other than the first page and the last page. Like, so much of it is, and then it's always like, every scene is just, oh, how do we get away from the two guys who just caught up with us again, trying to kill this kid? And I just didn't care about any of it. And like, yes, Lena Headey's amazing. There's so many other great films that she's been in, even indie films that she's been in that I love. This one, I was bored to tears and I couldn't wait for the end. And it's like, oh, it takes 9 bullets to kill me because I'm like a cat, blah, blah, blah. They only shoot her 5 times. And I said, shoot her 4 more. Go ahead.
You wanted her to get 50 cented, didn't you?
I didn't care for her. I did. The kid was kind of cute, but I still didn't care enough for the kid because the kid is also like, oh, I also like mine crypto or something. And it's like, I don't care. You know, like, I hated this movie.
You know, and there's the funny thing. For a movie where everyone was trying to kill this kid, the kid didn't get scathed like once.
No.
Once. Everyone else gets shot, but him.
I don't think he even gets a drop of blood on him. That's how, like, protected this child is in this movie.
Yeah. Let's see here. He's left alone for what probably feels like an entire day in a hotel by himself with no money and no food and some, yeah.
Also, the plot is very tired because actually I was describing this movie to my wife this past weekend. And I forget what movie she said, but like, yeah, I had to watch this movie where this like burlesque dancer turned author has to like save this kid. She goes, oh, you mean this movie? And I'm like, no, it's not that movie. She goes, oh, you must mean that movie. I'm like, no, not that one either. Like, I forget the names up right off the top of my head right now, but like, this is something that Hollywood's done multiple times, like almost its exact format. So like, this is nothing new and it's still done poorly.
All right, Greg, where does 9 bullets sit on the list of 5 for you?
I'm going to echo Martin's listing and say this is 4. If we're assuming that, once again, 5 is the worst, this is a 4 for me.
All right, Carrie, 9 bullets.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was just said. And there's really nothing more that I can add except I'm trying to find something nice to say about it, but
you're going Bambi on me here.
When I'm halfway through the movie, and you ask me how it's going, and I'm like, I still don't know what I'm watching and why this is happening. Like I think it had potential, but as Greg mentioned, it was almost like the script was just kind of thrown together, and maybe it was an editing decision, but I think it took too long into the storyline to actually figure out why this is happening. I mean, for the first half of the movie, I'm like, what is the significance of the tablet? Like, why is this going on? And really, I mean, I was concerned for the kid. I'm really questioning, where child welfare is going to come into the play here, because I'm like, this poor boy is now orphaned, and people are trying to kill him, and that's not good. I was also concerned for the dog. I didn't want to see any harm come to the pooch,
oh yeah, the dog. Yeah, there's a lot of animal cruelty running through these films. Thanks for that, Jason.
I just find it funny that Gypsy cares more about the dog than she does for the kid. I
mentioned the kid first.
I know, but Gypsy cared more for the dog. Like, I don't know. I have my thoughts, but where does 9 bullets sit on the rank of 5 for you?
It's at a 4.
Wow.
On my list as well. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I hate to break up the 4 party here.
Oh, you did.
Or the 4 play, as it were. But
the foursome?
The foursome, exactly. But I'm ranking this as a 3. Now,
how dare you?
I know, right?
Why?
Let me explain here. The premise, at least, I can get behind. Like the whole, the family's gunned down because the guy's skimming crypto off of the drug runner kind of thing. And I even get the fact that, everyone lives in this trailer park kind of thing. So they all kind of know Sam Worthington's character. Also, how far has Sam Worthington fallen? The fact that he's in this film, I think he's a good actor. I liked him in Clash of the Titans, and I loved the original Clash of the Titans. I actually really enjoyed Terminator Salvation, despite its flaws. If you told me the year the Terminator Salvation came out that there was going to be a Transformers movie, a G.I. Joe movie, and a Terminator movie that all came out in the same year, and I would like Terminator most of them, or above all the others, I would have laughed at you. But here we are. He was good in that. He was the worst, most ineffective drug kingpin ever, or crypto king, or whatever the hell he was. He was just like, I'm with this blonde, but I really want to be with Gypsy, and don't mess with me, or I'm gonna walk away and let you walk away, and nothing's gonna happen. Like,
or hire some useless goons,
right?
Like really ineffective.
Like I'm
useless
thinking
goons.
The goons in Roadhouse were more effective than the goons in this film, and they all, correct me if my memory's off. The ones in Roadhouse, it didn't end well for them. Didn't end well for these guys.
Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the characters more often than not felt like they didn't know what they wanted to be, right? At one point, it's like they're sympathetic, and at another point, they're just annoying as hell. The building blocks are there. The potential is there. But the direction and the script itself just aren't. But in amongst the five of them, it's middle of the road. That's 9 bullets for me. So we've got 9 bullets, sits at 3 4s and a 3. Moving on to Marmaduke. This film stars Pete Davidson and J.K. Simmons with a voice appearance by Mary Hart, the old Entertainment Tonight anchor, who was the voice of the Entertainment Tonight host in this one, which I kind of enjoyed that one. Released in May on Netflix, but it does have a worldwide box office of $1.3 million. If it feels familiar, that's because 12 years earlier in 2010, there was a live-action Marmaduke movie that came out with a much better cast. That one had Owen Wilson as the voice of Marmaduke, with a live-action cast of Lee Pace, Judy Greer, William H. Macy, and a voice cast that included Emma Stone, George Lopez, Steve Coogan, Fergie, Kiefer Sutherland, Marlon and Damon Wayans, and Sam Elliott. So clearly we got the crap end of the dog stick on that one. But I'm going to go to Greg to start this one off here. Marmaduke right. For you. But before we let you get started, though, the 2010 film over on Rotten Tomatoes has a 42% audience score and a 9% tomatometer. The 2022, the Pete Davidson, 27% audience score, 0% tomatometer. Greg, is that 0% warranted?
No, it's not. It should be in the negative numbers because This movie was atrocious. I like bad movies. I think based upon the movies I've brought to this podcast before, especially Mac and me, I love a good bad movie. I have a confession to make. I did not watch more than 10 minutes of this piece of shit. Wow. I couldn't get through it. I could not get through it. So you said that J.K. Simmons in this is? I didn't hear any of that. I didn't hear any of that because in the first 10 minutes, I'm infuriated. They don't start off with the whole oh, this is Marmaduke's deal. They just immediately big dog, he makes a big mess. And you're supposed to assume that. And they have all these throwaways and references to the comic strip. And they take too much assumption that the audience is fully into the Marmaduke deep lore and canon. They just jump right to it. And the one thing that absolutely boggled my mind was the I'm so mad right now. Just trying to think about this.
For the record,
was the character design, the goddamn inconsistent character design, the animation level. It is atrocious. It is choppy. The layering is wrong, and I don't know what the hell is going on with the physics in this world, because the mom, they decided to make relatively regular proportions, but thick as hell on her bottom. But then that trainer dude, the guy with the purple shirt that's oh, I'm like the dog whisperer, I'm going to train your dog. He has literal toothpicks for legs, and I didn't know what was going on there.
I will have to say, first things first, as we were preparing for this episode, I got a message from Greg. He's like, what the hell is this film?
Yeah. Oh, please read that up verbatim if you want. Go ahead.
But I do have to question. It feels like when it came to the CGI for this, when it came to the animation, it's almost as if someone tried to explain to an alien animator what a human body looked like.
Yeah.
And they basically shipped out the animation to some different planet. That's kind of what it looked like.
Yeah. But the part that really lost me, I was like, screw this, I'm out. Like, I can't anymore. Is the dog owner, or not the owner, the trainer, excuse me. The dog trainer takes Marmaduke to the park, right? Like, first of all, the owners don't know anything about this dude, but he's like, oh, I'm world famous. I'm retired, but I'm going to make Marmaduke like my crown jewel gem of like a project or whatever. Fine. So he takes him out to the park. And the very first thing this man does to this dog is he hits him. He like does this like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Matrix like wire fu, like soul energy kick at the dog's face. Sends a key blast like Dragon Ball Z style at the dog's face. And then that's supposed to teach the dog. I'm like, no, I'm out. Like, I'm not here for this lack of logic. And also like, sorry, but like, I don't like that message that like, oh yeah, just kick your dog and he'll learn a trick. Like, no. You lost me immediately. I like animals. I don't believe in animal cruelty, like whatsoever. Like even in The Thing, even when I'm watching John Carpenter's The Thing, and I know, spoilers alert for The Thing, fast forward 30 seconds. Even when I know the dog is the thing at the very beginning, there, I'm still like, don't shoot at the dog. Why are you shooting at the dog? Poor doggy.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure I can guess where you have ranked this film.
Five, hard five.
Okay, so we have hit the bottom of the barrel for Greg. Carrie, how was Marmaduke for you?
It should have been a 6.
First of all, are you okay, Greg?
No.
Is it going to be okay?
I'm not. I'm stress eating candy right now because I had to think about Marmaduke again.
Jay, you broke Greg. That's not cool. Not cool.
There's only one film. There's only one film I've ever not finished besides Marmaduke. And people will hate me for this. You come at me for you flamers out there. But like, this is my confession. The one film I couldn't finish besides Marmaduke was Legend with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. I don't know what it was about the movie, but that movie was just boring as me too.
Fascinating. I do have to say the only film I ever wanted to walk out of the theaters during, and Carrie, you'll probably agree with this one, is The Dead Don't Die. That film, that the trailer looked great.
I can respect that.
Film, not so much.
I kept watching, hoping that it would get better. Just hoping, waiting for the turn.
Wait, are you talking The Dead Don't Die, or are you talking Marmaduke now?
Yes.
Okay, Carrie, Marmaduke.
Well, now that I question everything, I ranked it a little bit higher than Greg. So I kind of right now feel like that clown with the SOS sign.
Well, Greg's not going to laugh at that. He didn't make it that far.
I can imagine.
Okay. The good things. It had a dog show, and you know, that was cool.
It was worse than show.
Yeah, I kind of giggled at the line, the Marmaduke, the not so great Dane. But I mean, in hindsight, that's really cruel. So trying to think of something nice to say. Okay, I'll admit that, you know, I did turn to Jay, and we watched it with our youngest son, by the way. And so I really had to torture. I didn't mean to torture him.
Now we're going to get Child Protective Services after us.
So, you know, I had to keep my comments on this movie, you know, clean, but I did question the body composition of a lot of the characters, and I really kind of feel like the animation team might be
robots.
No, I was kind of thinking more like a kindergarten class project, where they're drawing stick people, but the body composition is not quite.
That makes a lot of sense now.
I do have to wonder though, is there actually a comic?
This was based on a newspaper comic strip.
Okay, were the people drawn that way?
No.
Because that
No.
I'm trying to
So
understand.
I used to read Marmaduke as a kid. It was a single panel comic strip. So it's not like you're doing like a 3-panel story. It's just a single thing, kind of like Ziggy, right? Where it's just like, here's your one joke. And 90% of the time, it's just Marmaduke like scaring the bejesus out of the mailman or fighting with his master over the armchair. That's it. Like, it's all just about, oh, aren't Great Danes so big? But it's always just a 1-panel thing. So like, but they were drawn normally. Like if you've ever seen like Dennis the Menace or something like that, it was like a similar kind of animation style.
So does the classic Marmaduke comic strip actually look like a washed up Scooby-Doo? Like, is that kind of how he's supposed to look? Or
no, it's more of a realistic looking Great Dane. Like, it actually looks like someone looked at a textbook for like dog breeds and was like, oh, here's a Great Dane. Cool, I'll draw that.
Okay. All the same, I actually, like I said, I ranked this movie a little bit higher, and that was really
grading on a curve.
Yeah, but you know what? There were a few laughs, and as much as I agree and applaud every point that you had, Greg, I think that I'm gonna give it a 3.
Okay.
I'm gonna stand firm with that ranking. Again, only for the laughs, and I really enjoyed the talent show. So, if you ever do revisit watching this movie, see it through to the talent show portion of the dog show, because
Greg's got a hard no on that one there.
I'll say this right now. For those of you out there who want a good Marmaduke film that's like not the 2012 one, there's actually one that's an unofficial one that you can still use. It's on Disney. It's an old one called The Ugly Dachshund. And it's about a Great Dane who's raised in a litter of Dachshund puppies. So he thinks he's tiny, but he's actually big. But it's a great film.
That just sounds cute. That sounds really cute. All right, Martin, Marmaduke, what you got?
Marmaduke, it was the first one of the 5 that I watched, so it had me worried for the rest. It wasn't great. I agree with you. My first impression, because I really didn't have any idea going into it, was this like a washed up Scooby-Doo. The
Kirkland brand version.
And honestly, the biggest redeeming feature for the movie for me was the SOS clown that just kept showing up. I found that very funny.
I'm gonna go Google this now. I have to see this thing.
It almost makes you wonder if that was the animators kind of putting in their own little, please dear God, don't make me work on a Marmaduke too.
Yeah, the clown really was sort of how I felt throughout the movie. I agree with Carrie that the talent show was fun. But the character design was so inconsistent. It felt like every new human that showed up on screen was sort of rolling the dice on what they were going to look like, and if they were proportioned right or what.
I mean, I get people look different, but this felt like various levels of the air hose being shoved up the ass when they're trying to design these people. But I'm now curious. I'd never actually looked up which animation company actually did this, but I'm pretty sure they're out of business right now.
Yeah, who's responsible for this?
So, Martin, where did you put Marmaduke on the ranking of 5 here?
I put it at 3. It was the first that I watched, and it made me laugh at a couple points, and so I'd have to put it at 3. Okay,
I'm going to break Greg here for a second.
If you say 1, I'm disconnecting. I swear to Christ.
No. But I did put it at 2.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
Let me put this right out on Front. Okay, let me explain. Let me put this right out on Front Street here. Yes, we are kind of grading on a curve here. So this is the second best out of 5 really bad entries. But yes, we did watch this with our youngest. He actually liked it. And that's kind of what this film was meant for. Lots of fart jokes, lots of goofy humor. And while it didn't, hit that level of there's enough jokes in there for the adults, I do have to remind you, Carrie, that at one point you did guffaw quite loudly. I think it was during the clown SOS scene. But it did exactly what it needed to do. it amused our youngest, right? He liked it. The jokes are there for him. This isn't necessarily a film for us, which is kind of funny that they took a property like Marmaduke, a property that should be aimed at people at our age, because we probably read the comic strip in the newspaper, right? Big thing that shows up at your doorstep with words, newspaper. But they aimed it for the much younger demographic. And in that sense, I have a feeling if this was not a Marmaduke film, if it was just, big clumsy dog that has Marmaduke Clifford type tendencies kind of thing, then okay, it's a different property, but it's Marmaduke, right? You expect certain things out of that. The Marmaduke humor was, a low bar to begin with, and it kind of cleared that low bar. It's not saying much, but at least it understood the assignment. So that's why it gets a 2 from me. Okay, moving on to Beauty. Starring Gracie Marie Bradley, Niecy Nash, Giancarlo Esposito, who is awesome in anything, and Sharon Stone for some reason. Released in June on Netflix, this film has a tomatometer of 22% and a first for this podcast, an audience score of 0.
Wow.
Yeah, the audience turned its back on this. And if you're watching this movie saying it kind of feels a lot like it's supposed to be the Whitney Houston story, the scene where Beauty ends up on the Irv Berlin show is almost identical to a Whitney Houston performance on the Merv Griffin show back in the day. You can find that clip on YouTube. But I have to say, as I'm watching this film, the very first thing that comes to my mind as we're going through this, aside from Oh Dear God, Why, is if you've ever watched the sitcom 30 Rock, there's a story angle in that sitcom where they're trying to make a Janis Joplin biopic, but they don't have the likeness rights, the song rights, the story rights, the nothing rights. So they basically make a Janis Joplin type character for Jenna Maroney with character names like Janet Joplin, Jenny Jimplin, and of course Jackie Jump Jump, which is the actual title for a season 3 episode. This kind of felt like that. I'm going to jump on this one first because this is my number 5 film. I mentioned that there was only one film that I ever wanted to walk out of the theaters, and that was The Dead Don't Die. I was begging for end of life while watching this film.
Did you want the 9 bullets?
Oh, and another 9 on top of it, just to make sure that the job was done. This film, it's a shame too, because I fully admit that anything Giancarlo Esposito in is usually pretty good, because Giancarlo Esposito is a phenomenal actor. I'm just wondering who had pictures of him that he ended up in this film. It was so poorly directed. It felt like there were actual chunks and scenes removed from the final script. Like this film is an absolute mess. The 22% critic score had to be the fact that people saw Giancarlo Esposito and said, "Oh, hey, I know him." I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. This may be the worst film I have ever seen in my entire life.
Damn.
Wow. Drop the mic.
This, I'm with the 0% audience score on this one.
Now you know how I felt about Marmaduke. What's up?
Oh, even still, I'm sure you put Marmaduke at 5 though, Greg. I don't know what you found redeeming in this one. So, Greg, I'm going to go to you and then Beauty. What were your thoughts on this?
My thoughts were that it was better than 9 bullets and Marmaduke. That's what my thoughts were. At least this one had a story that I was kind of interested and invested in, the whole dynamic between her and her toxic relationship with her parents, both her mother and her father. The interesting back and forth that she has with her friend. I think her name was Jasmine in this film.
Yep.
you know, I thought it was a very interesting choice. Not one I agree with, but an interesting choice that it's a biopic about a famous singer and they never have the actress sing. I thought that was a very unique perspective and approach to it. And I was kind of like what you're saying with the whole like Janis Joplin or whatever the 30 Rock's names were, you know, it's like, okay, maybe that's what it was. They just didn't have the rights to the music or something, but still that's a fun workaround. The constant cutting to her right after she's about to record or after she's done recording. And then she's kind of flashing back in her memory. So I'm like, okay, I get this. But the reason why I also don't like this film is that it wastes so much time doing nothing. There's a scene very specifically, I remember, where she is in her house, Beauty is, and they show her a tracking shot behind her, leave her house, walk across the street, like down the block, like a couple houses, go through the side gate, through the backyard, up into the kitchen, say hi to some other person's mom. Oh, she's upstairs? Okay, cool. Tracks are going upstairs, and then goes there, and then Jasmine's upset. And it's like, why did we follow her for literally like 3 minutes? You could have just made it a 20-second, like she opens the door and says, oh, what's wrong? I came over to see how you're doing. Like, we don't need to waste that time there. And that's what this movie is. It's just like what's the opposite of Cliff Notes? It's like the like purposefully like long drawn out like vamping. It's almost as they were like, the next scene's not built yet. Give us more time. Make us more time so we can get the next scene ready. But it's a film. You don't have to vamp. It's
like they took the Dan Brown novel and gave it the Tom Clancy treatment at that point.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that baffled the crap out of me, right? We've covered some films on this show where, yes, you know, music is kind of like the basis from it. Like we just did an episode on Jem and the Holograms, and they let Jem sing.
Great film.
And Jem could sing, right? Mm-hmm. Here's a film about someone who is a phenomenal singer. The entire thing is, you know, this black woman with a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Like, yeah, no one sings in this damn film. They spend more time watching people sing on TV than we actually hear them sing, and that amount is zero. Like, at least have a song, right? At least Jackie Jump had some songs written for her. Like when she's performing with Billy Hendricks at Woodstocks before the vampires attacked. Oh, I got issues with this film. But it's true. Like, there were scenes where it felt like it was, exposition through cinematography, right? I'm just going to stare out this window and be moody for like 10 seconds while a song plays for no reason whatsoever, right? Like, it really felt edgy and moody for edgy and moody's sake. Martin. Oh, sorry. Before I get to Martin there, Greg, you ranked this at what?
Because it's slightly better than Marmaduke and Beauty or Nine Bullets, I'm ranking this as a 3.
Ooh, that means you're doubling down on Kevin Hart in your 1 and 2. Impressive.
Listen, we're going to get there, but yes, proudly so.
All right, Martin, Beauty, how was this one for you?
I started watching Beauty about 4 times. I kept finding myself getting distracted by pretty much anything else. I'd be zoning out and I'd come back in and somebody would be singing on a TV. I didn't end up finishing it just because every time I tried to watch it, something else was more interesting. As it was like, oh, we're just walking, or the conversations often didn't feel like it was progressing to anything. It was just talking for talking's sake.
And the script, though. Like, is it just me, or did it feel like it was just cliche after cliche after cliche?
From what I saw of it, yeah. Nothing at any point in this movie had me invested.
Now, I'm scared to ask, where are you putting Beauty?
I have to put it at a 5, considering I couldn't get through it.
That sounds about right. That's like the Greg rating there on Marmaduke. All right, Carrie, how was Beauty for you?
I'm feeling like I stand alone here. I felt that it was, of the movies, probably one of the most watchable, in that
you and I watch movies very differently.
I felt for the character. You know, you can really see that she was extremely talented in a household where she grew up praising her father, and he, in spite of his flaws and clearly ruling his household with an iron fist, she still looked up to him until her it was almost kind of like her emancipation from a very controlling, very abusive, if you want to put it that way, family situation. Again, I truly felt for the character. I wanted to see her rise to fame. I wanted to see her
sing.
That would have been nice and helpful to the story. But I wanted to see her succeed, and I wanted to see her on her own succeed. A few things to that. I felt that Giancarlo Esposito was brilliant in his role. He was so frightening. And I've always kind of seen him as a very genuinely kind-hearted man. I was frightened watching him. Did
you not remember The Mandalorian?
Well, okay. But he has kind eyes. And in this one, he was scary. I don't know. He just seemed very, again, I was uncomfortably frightened watching him. You know what? Aside from that, yes, some music would have been nice. It would have been nice to hear her sing. But I think, again, the lack of rights, and it would have given too much away, right? It would have been a little bit too self-aware that it was loosely, intentionally based on, the unofficially, Whitney Houston story. However, what I wanted to say is it was almost kind of like a day in the life, or watching, life ticks by fairly slowly or at a pace. And I kind of felt like maybe that was the intention of, the extra scenes of, she sits and listens to all sorts of various musical stylings. And I really enjoyed that, because that was so pivotal in almost kind of her own style, right? Or when she was having that conversation with her record producer that she needed to sound a certain way, right? Even though she has grown up listening to more soulful music, perhaps. So I thought that was really cool, and I just kind of wanted a little bit less of the brooding, like you mentioned, and a little bit more of her rise to fame, because literally it was almost kind of like at one point she's in a New York apartment, and she's left her family behind, and it's that moment of self-discovery. How did it happen? Why are we here? How did we get here? would have kind of been I think nice to have seen in the scripting. But all things being what it is, I rated Beauty at number 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm sitting here saying this is the worst film I've ever seen in my entire life, and you're like, it's not that bad.
Yep.
Oh, moving on down the list to
it's not Kevin Hart.
Speaking of Kevin Hart, though, we have our first step in our heart-to-heart here. It's The Man from Toronto, which stars Kevin Hart, Woody Harrelson, Kaylee Cuoco, and Ellen Barkin. However, this film almost starred Jason Statham as the Man from Toronto, but he left the production apparently under creative differences. and Woody Harrelson stepped in. This film was directed by Patrick Hughes, who directed The Hitman's Bodyguard, The Hitman's Bodyguard's Wife, and The Expendables 3, and has yet to apologize for any of them. This film was mostly filmed in Toronto and around the Greater Toronto area. Released in June on Netflix, it has an estimated budget of $75 million. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, this film has an audience score of 44% and a tomatometer of 23. But if you look up The Man from Toronto on Rotten Tomatoes, you might get a little confused. Because in 1933, there was a movie released called The Man from Toronto, starring Jesse Matthews, who starred in Tom Thumb, and Ian Hunter, who played King Richard the Lionheart in the Errol Flynn version of The Adventures of Robin Hood. So yes, there is another Man from Toronto. No, it's nothing like this film. So to start though, we are going to The Girl from Toronto, or at least around Toronto. Carrie, what did you think of The Man from Toronto? Have I said Toronto enough times already?
It's very akin to the drinking game that we could have played with the amount of times that they said The Man from Toronto, which literally, as the movie was going on, was becoming like nails on a chalkboard to me. Like, it was very triggering when I would hear The Man from Toronto over and over and over. And it was just so incredibly annoying, almost annoying as Kevin Hart.
Wow.
Now, you had mentioned that there was an almost starring for Woody Harrelson's character, but I think any other actor playing Teddy would have been better. if you could literally speak with a question mark following the word, yeah, I could not get over Kevin Hart. He was, so you're supposed to feel bad for Teddy. He's trying. His
name's a verb. He
has good intentions. He wants the best for his wife, his girlfriend, to have the best birthday ever. And he is so aware that he's constantly not performing up to his highest potential in life, in his relationships. And you really want to feel bad for him. I could not feel bad for Kevin Hart as Teddy at all. I am so sorry. It was a 5. It was,
wow.
If I could have gone less than 5, like it was a 10. I was so angered by this movie, and every single time I heard either Low Toner or The Man from Toronto, and I just
maintain low toner. Personally,
the whole like non-contact boxing, I wanted to knock Kevin Hart out.
Wow. Number 5.
10.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Negative 10.
Okay, I have to point this out.
What is happening?
I broke the internet.
Yet again. I do have to point out, though, that while we were watching this film, Carrie at one point leaned over to me and said, how many times do they actually say Toronto? So I counted.
Please tell me.
Not just The Man from Toronto, but the number of times the word Toronto was actually uttered in this film. And I left out the part where there's the little bill from Woody Harrelson's restaurant, and the fact that he actually called the restaurant Toronto's.
Oh, God, that's right.
37 times the word Toronto was uttered. 37.
Can I just add the disclaimer, though? This is no disrespect to Woody Harrelson. I really like him. I have always really liked him. I thought he played his character well.
He's not actually the Man from Toronto, right? You don't have to be afraid of him.
Although I could see why they would put Jason Statham in that role to begin with. I can absolutely see it. Okay, Martin, we're going to the other side of Canada here. What were your thoughts on The Man from Toronto?
Of the 5, it was the one I think I enjoyed the most. Contrary to Carrie. I don't mind Kevin Hart. They did say Toronto way too many times. But the pacing overall it felt like it was paced in a way that made sense, and there was a story that I could follow. This one I didn't hate.
So you, like Greg, have both Kevin Hart movies sitting 1 and 2.
I do.
Where does The Man from Toronto sit?
The Man from Toronto sits at number 1 for me.
Wow, we went from a 5 to a 1. And I'm going to jump in on this one here because it's also my number 1. Carrie's just looking at me like I don't even know you anymore. Yeah, I mean, I will admit, watching Kevin Hart in this, I was getting some very, very, very heavy Chris Tucker vibes while watching, mainly like from Rush Hour and The Fifth Element, because that's a voice that will grate on your nerves till the end of the earth. But Woody Harrelson, like Jason Statham, I can easily see in this role. I think Woody Harrelson made it a bit more fun. He kind of brought that Zombieland vibe to him. Also, I don't know where the hell Kaylee Cuoco came from in this movie. She all of a sudden pops up.
You said starring Kaylee Cuoco, and I think that we need to refigure what the word starring means because she's in it for like 2 seconds.
That is basically like, hey, you'll know this name at this point. I will say though, having Ellen Barkin though as the call on the line, the handler, that was really, really cool. I think Woody Harrelson really saved this film, and admittedly, I would never put The Man from Toronto on a must-watch list on anything and any year. But if I'm taking a look at it in comparison to these 5 films, this is actually the best of the bunch. So, Man from Toronto for me. Greg, you've got a 1-2 punch for Kevin Hart. Where does The Man from Toronto sit for you?
Gonna jump on that. Everybody thinks Carrie's wrong train. This is a number 1.
Wow. Carrie with the holdout on number 5. Greg, how was The Man from Toronto for you?
I liked it. I mean, of course, the whole like non-contact boxing thing is stupid, but I like Kevin Hart. I think he's fun. I think he's an entertaining man, and I like what he does in almost all of his movies. To me, what really sold this was the idea of him accidentally stumbling into the wrong house and then having to BS his way through an interrogation, not once, but like multiple times. That was like comic gold for me, of him trying to hold it together, knowing if I tell them, oh, sorry, wrong house, I'm dead too. So that was just genius. I loved it. You know, Woody Harrelson, of course, now that I know I could have had Jason Statham, I'm a little bit upset, but still Woody Harrelson's great. You know, I almost had no problems with this movie whatsoever. I think, you know, I didn't notice the whole like, oh, they said Toronto a whole bunch. That just kind of like flew under my radar. But when you mentioned it, it's like, oh yeah, they kind of did, because it's his name. You know, the one thing I really have issues with is that this man wants to open a restaurant based around durian food. Do you have any idea how smelly durian is? No, thank you. I do not agree with that end goal, like dream of his. So stupid. But the rest of it, I enjoyed. This is a fun film. I would go back and watch this again gladly. It's one of those ones that I don't think is going to ever stand out in my mind, like in 2 or 3 years of like, oh yeah, such a great film. Like I remember this part clearly, and I remember the plot of that. Like, but it's a good one. If it ever came on again, I would happily watch it.
I do have to say too, as well. I mean, at least as far as a world building thing goes, the fact that you had all these other assassins that were working for the handler, as you know, the man from Russia,
Hong Kong or whatever.
Exactly. Like there's a fascinating element there, and I mean, if it was better of a film, then you could see them kind of going further down that road, and maybe there is another Man From movie out there that will eventually. The nice thing too is if it's a different man from a different city, then you don't have to have Kevin Hart. So maybe Carrie will actually like that one here. Okay, last film of our 2022 rundown here. It's Me Time, also starring Kevin Hart, also Mark Wahlberg and Regina Hall, and an appearance by Seal. Written and directed by John Hamburg, who also directed Along Came Polly, I Love You Man, and Why Him. According to IMDb, this film has an estimated budget of $80 million, $5 million more than The Man from Toronto. I assume that's all in the turtles that they bought. Released in August, this film has a 33% audience score over on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6% tomatometer. And as I'm taking a look at this, Carrie, this is your number one film. Why is Me Time your number one film?
Well, although Mark Wahlberg couldn't save it, I found I usually really like him. I found his character very unlikable. In spite of that, though, I think my decision was based solely on the scene where Kevin Hart's character gets chased by the cougar. And I literally had... I guffawed.
The animal, not an older woman.
I had tears streaming down my eyes and a good laugh fit. Because it reminded me, and it's ironic that Seal is in this movie because of
pop star, never stopping.
Exactly, the scene where Seal gets chased by, was it a cougar as well?
I can't remember if that was a lion or a tiger or something like that. Yeah, it was some kind of a cheetah.
Some large cat animal had chased Seal in that movie. And so I thought that was a brilliant nod. But even at that, I still gave this movie a number one, only grading on a curve from the other movies.
All right, Martin, this is your number two film. Why Me Time at number two?
It made me laugh. This one, I did find it very, very humorous. There are a lot of points that had me chuckling. I found there were a couple of subplots that kind of felt sort of thrown in. The talent show that had it came to end with the talent show felt sort of a little bit forced to me, but otherwise I did enjoy it.
All right, Greg, it's also your number two. Why did Me Time play so well there?
Once again, I'm a big fan of Kevin Hart. I do like a good Mark Wahlberg every now and then. I can only handle him so much, but I haven't had a good Mark Wahlberg helping in a while. So I guess my palate was ready for that. I kind of agree with what Martin said, though. Some of it seemed kind of, where did this plot line go? And especially for me at the very end, it kind of felt like the end was almost a little too rushed for me. If they had taken even just 1 or 2 minutes more to flesh out the whole he's not really in trouble, but he is on the boat. But we're just gonna have a business together. That just kind of seemed we're reaching the end of our number of allotted reels for this project. How do we wrap this up? But I like the idea of the guy who's it always has to be something big for my birthday. Please be part of this. Not letting go of that old friendship, even though we've kind of moved on. I think that part was fun. Seal, I always enjoy Seal. I especially really liked him. Spoiler alerts for this show, but he was a couple seasons ago. I liked him when he was on The Masked Singer. Seeing him be able to sing different songs than his own just to prove how good of an artist he is. But yeah, overall, the only reason that this didn't beat out The Man from Toronto, like I said, is just I felt that some parts were rushed. Some parts kind of dragged on a bit more for the plot points than they should have. So it wasn't as clean and tight as The Man from Toronto felt.
Okay, and I have this film as my number 4 film. I think that the thing for this with me is that, again, like Martin said, the whole, the good thing at the end, the talent show and all that. It's almost like they try to shoehorn in a happy ending kind of thing. This film needed to be just an hour and a half of just straight up, off the wall. Can't believe you're watching all of this. That kind of gross out humor, that kind of just beyond insane. And unfortunately, it wasn't that. It wasn't even memorable at times. This is a meandering film. It's meandering time. I can't even, it was boring. And that's saying something about a movie with Kevin Hart and Mark Wahlberg. The potential was there. The Uber driver was okay, but that's about it. I don't know. In comparison, to, the laughs, and the action and all that from The Man from Toronto. And I think that's probably it too. Kevin Hart had a decent film in The Man from Toronto, admittedly grading on a curve here, and then this, like a month or two later, it paled in comparison to The Man from Toronto. It's not beauty. That's a good thing, but it was my number 4 film. Okay, so doing the quick rundown here. Martin, going from 5 to 1, what were your films?
At number 5, I had... What did I have at number 5? I didn't actually write it all down. But at number 5, I had Beauty. I couldn't get through it. At number 4, I had 9 Bullets. At number 3, I had Marmaduke. At number 2, I had Me Time. And at number 1, I had The Man from Toronto.
Greg, run it down from 5 to 1.
Number 5, Marmaduke. Atrocious movie. Number 4, 9 Bullets. Boring as hell. Number 3, Beauty. Better than those other 2. Number 2, Me Time. Not too bad. At number 1, The Man from Toronto.
You still missed a few.
Toronto.
Carrie, your rundown from 5 to 1.
At 5, we have The Man from Toronto. Toronto. Of which, I didn't hate. I have to say, I did not hate how Woody Harrelson said Toronto. I am not one of those hardcore Torontonians that wanted to attack him for his pronunciation of our
Wait, is there a wrong
city.
way to say Toronto? I don't know about this.
So says the internet.
Yeah,
I don't...
we've heard it a few times, different ways already on this episode. Okay, let's go around here. Martin, say Toronto.
Toronto.
Greg.
Toronto.
Carrie.
Toronto.
Yeah, and Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah. So
what is it, the hard T at the end?
Well, it's one of the things. You can either go Toronto, Toronto, or Toronto, almost like it's a D at the end. Very Homer Simpson. Dough.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Maybe. I guess depends on how drunk you are.
Maybe, why not?
Depends if you're slurring. I don't know.
It was a good beer. Anyways, Carrie.
Okay.
Your rundown, 5 to 1.
5, The Man from Toronto. 4 is 9 Bullets. 3 is Marmaduke. SOS. At number 2, I had Beauty. And at number 1, Me Time.
All right, and I've got Beauty at number 5 is the worst film I think I've ever seen. Number 4 is Me Time. Number 3, 9 Bullets. Number 2, Marmaduke. And number 1, The Man from Toronto. Okay, before we wrap up our 2022 look back at some of the worst movies that this year has seen released, I'm going to go around the table here, and Greg, I'm going to start with you here. Was there a movie released this year worse than those 5?
I can't think of a single one that I would ever wish onto anybody of an enemy of mine more than Marmaduke. So no, nothing. Marmaduke is the absolute pinnacle of the bottom of the pit for me. So no.
Carrie, is there a 2022 movie that is worse than these 5?
I'm thinking back. Thor: Love and Thunder was a 22, was it?
How
It was.
dare you?
You broke Greg.
Oh no. I'm so sorry.
Carrie, we were Mr. Right friends.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
We're no longer cool, are we? Oh no.
No. It's just we're going to have some counseling. That's all.
We'll get through this.
Carrie's taking
I
your
want to
stocking
salvage
down.
this relationship, so we'll be fine.
Martin, is there a 2022 film that you think deserves to be on this list over one of these 5?
I can't think of one.
I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking Morbius should be on the list.
Oh, was Morbius this year?
Morbius was this year.
Holy sh! Yeah, that beats out Beauty for me.
I'd like to change my answer.
I mean, here's the thing: we have already covered Morbius on this show. We've also covered The Bubble on this show, and I thought The Bubble was great personally.
That wasn't too bad.
Yeah, The Bubble doesn't deserve to be one of these 5. That's for sure. Thor: Love and Thunder. I mean, if you're grading on a Marvel curve, yeah, sure, maybe, but
I was just thinking back to movies that we went to see in theater in the past, the most recent past, and I fell asleep during one of the scenes. I just couldn't get into that movie, and that's where I was. But definitely the vote goes to Morbius.
Yeah. Black Adam is up there as well when you think about it. I mean, I think it's only got like what, a 33% tomatometer, and it was meandering to a point. But that's just me. Morbius, though, probably should be on the list, but we already talked about that film. Okay. We are also closing in on the Razzies, which will probably be announced around the same time as the Oscars. So, Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Is there any performance in any of these 5 movies that you think will warrant a Razzie nomination?
I'm afraid to answer because
oh no, put it out there.
I apparently stand alone with my opinions of Kevin Hart.
You can
you're
put him
safe.
out there.
You're safe.
Yeah.
It's fine. Safe space.
Kevin Hart as Teddy in The Man from Toronto. I
will say I have Kevin Hart and Mark Wahlberg listed down as a potential nominee for worst on-screen combo, but I would also put Andrew Dosunmu. I'm going to apologize if I messed up that name, but I'm an idiot in the basement with the microphone, as potential for worst director for Beauty. Not necessarily the actors in Beauty, but I think they're just working with a paper-thin script and a rudderless director. Again, personal thought. Martin, is there any performance in any of these films that you think will end up with a Razzie nomination?
Yeah, I could see Beauty with the worst director. It really didn't feel like there was anything supporting the story. Like it wasn't directed well.
All right, Greg, who's getting a Razzie out of this?
I forget if they do animated or not, but for sure Pete Davidson deserves something for his soulless, how much am I getting paid for this performance in Marmaduke? Like, his voice just was so bland and blah. I couldn't stand it. Trying to think of anyone else who was really bad for their performance in these other movies, though. I mean, not Lena. I'm trying to go through 9 bullets. Not Lena Headey. She was at least she was the only good part of that film, really. But even still, I couldn't keep up with the script. What was the guy's name again?
Sam Worthington.
Yeah, I wasn't digging him at all.
I can see that. I can also see Pete Davidson hiding every single Netflix account from Emily Ratajkowski, so she doesn't see it and sees exactly. I don't understand the Pete Davidson thing. I just don't.
I don't either. I don't. Yeah.
You do realize, though, that we are going to have to at some point gather as we get close to the Razzies and take a look at those. But that is for another episode. Martin, Greg, Carrie, thank you all so much for suffering through these 5 movies that were all released this calendar year. We'll have to do this again next year. This is Grading on a Curve, and It's Not That Bad production. If you're looking for us on Twitter, you can find us at Not That Badcast. If you're looking for us on Facebook, can't stop that, Elon, can you? You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Not That Badcast. Even though we have kind of crapped on these movies, you know what? Go watch them, because you never know what you're going to like. Sorry, Greg, I got to put it out there. Go watch the films. Decide for yourself.
Decide for yourself, fine.
Exactly. Thank you for all the listens, for all the mentions, and for all the guest appearances on It's Not That Bad this calendar year. Thank you so much for a really, really good 2022. Until next time, Happy New Year, everyone. This is Grading on a Curve, and It's Not That Bad production. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. we're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month. So just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.